You've tamed the voices in your head. You've put your courage to the test. Laid all your doubts to
Hi everyone, welcome from your Intuition Queen to a new episode of Intuitive Queens podcast. Today I have the pleasure to have with me Jennifer Major who is a professional organize coach. Hi Jennifer, welcome.
Hi there. So good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So I'm very intrigued by your title, Professional Organized Coach. What does that mean? But before we get to that, because I know you will tell us your story, I kind of would like to know first, how did you get to become a professional organized coach? What happened? Did you feel anything? Something happened in your life?
Oh, for sure. So I went through the better part. I mean, it really started as a kid that I wanted to be a teacher. And as I went through high school and university, that switched to more of that psychological perspective, that, therapy or something like that. I ended up, sort of family constructs and sort of, societal expectations, if you will. I ended up going corporate and was in human resources, which is kind of the same. I was working with people and helping them through their day in their corporate world. And it was remarkably unsatisfying.
Mm.
And it always felt really heavy because it was, first of all, it was a lot of people, because that was my job to work with people all the time. And most of the time they didn't come to us when things were great. They came to us when things were hard. And so that always felt really heavy. But I'm a very intuitive learner. When I learn something, I sort of metabolize it. And so HR is not the place to be for that. I mean, that's lots of rules and regulations. And you have to be able to, when somebody says, well, why do I have to do that? Or when I'm doing a training, well, tell us what the background is behind that. I could never remember the name of the rule. I was like, well, I just know. But that wasn't enough. And so it felt uncomfortable for a long time. Even once I left corporate HR and was working with small businesses and startups, it still just never felt like the right fit. And so the economy had taken a downturn. I'd recently gotten married, and we knew that having a family at some point was going to be in the cards. And I would never be a stay-at-home mom. I admire people who can be stay-at-home moms full-time. That is not my calling. But I knew that I wanted to have some time with my kid. So it's like, okay, well, I'll start my business, and I'd had a business of my own before. And so the logical thing, of course, was to go into HR consulting. So that's what I did. But it was still, even working for myself, it was still unfulfilling. And so I was like, what else can I do that's fun? And so really just started exploring that, talking to friends, talking to colleagues. And they're like, you're always organizing everybody, whether it's the process, whether it's the team, whether it's my garage when I need help, whatever it is. Why don't you do this professional organizer thing? And it was just really coming sort of into the consciousness outside of like the super uber wealthy, right? They've had professional organizers for decades and decades. But to come to sort of the more everyday middle class was just coming out. There was a show on TV that had an organizer, but he came in with a whole team and he redecorated and reorganized. And I was like, well, that's not what I'm going to do. But okay, we'll try it, because it felt very comfortable and it felt really easy and fun, which also didn't feel like work. It felt really awkward to charge at first, because I was like, but I'm having fun, this doesn't make sense, because I'd never felt that in my regular job, right? I'd felt satisfaction, but I never felt like it was fun.
Yeah.
And so really just started going down that path. And for a while it was both HR and organizing, and I was doing both. They weren't necessarily related, though realistically they were. But more and more that HR kept getting shoved out because it just wasn't fun. I wasn't enjoying it. And so I wasn't doing the business development for it because I just didn't want to, and I would get great referrals, and I built my entire business for the last 16 years on referrals. Um, I think I advertised a couple of times, but it was only because I was actually, one of my clients was an advertising company, and they were like, well, let's just throw an ad out there for you. Okay.
Right.
But otherwise, yeah, I mean, and it was very much like, I've always been a person, especially as a kid, who followed my intuition. And, sometimes it was louder than others. Sometimes I listened better than others, certainly. But it was one of those that it just more and more, it felt like the right move.
Mm, yeah.
And I just, I guess it was finally 2, 3 years ago that I officially said, you know what, I'm putting everything else away. Like, I ended my HR certification, which was really hard because it was a really hard certification to get, but I didn't renew it. And so now it's gone unless I want to take that crazy test again. And I've fully 100% committed to just doing the organizing. And it's been the best thing I've ever done.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
Okay. You said so many beautiful things, and so many things that I'm pretty sure a lot of women go through their lives, especially when they decide at some point, hard as it might be, to leave something behind, even if it doesn't make you happy. But I want to go back a little bit, because you said that you were interested in psychology, and then you went for the safest route, which is a job in HR. What was for you the thought of you once you had finished the study and got all your qualification? If you didn't go into what you were supposed to do because that's what people said that you had to do, what would have been your kind of dream job, still staying into psychology? Did you have an idea of what could possibly make you happy, or you just didn't know, so you went for HR?
For sure. No, I mean, from the time I was probably 14 or 15, I had taken my first psychology class in high school, and an amazing teacher, which, I mean, that doesn't always happen at that level. Because it's Psych 101, it's very generic. But it lit something up in me. And I just thought, like, my purpose in this world is to help families and women and children. And so what that looked like in that construct was that I was going to be a therapist.
Right.
But I really wanted to get my PhD because I loved the idea of being able to really help people one-on-one, but I loved the idea too of being able to do some research. And, the introvert in me likes the idea of, like, okay, well, let me just go over here and study some spreadsheets, right? Because I do love that part. I love being able to get into the data of everything. And seriously, and I was talking to somebody about this just yesterday. What entered my head, was probably 19. I was a sophomore in college, and there were a lot of personal things going on. And I just thought, you know what? If I keep doing this, I'm not going to get out of college until I'm 28 to be a child and family therapist, and I will have no child and I will have no family. I don't know why I thought I couldn't date or get married while I was in school, but apparently I did. I just, like, I was always, like, I dated a lot in college, but I was always super focused. And so, like, in my head, I wouldn't have a child or a family, and family of origin stories, like, by 28, like, I needed to be really getting on that kid thing. And so that didn't fit anymore. Even though it felt like what I wanted to do,
Right.
it didn't fit. And so it was like, okay, well, I've already got part of my education done. I'm already going kind of down this path. How can I steer it? And so rather than finishing up with child and family psychology, I turned it to industrial organizational, which is the psychology side of HR. Really, it's the data side of HR. And so, but again, still didn't want to go, like, my heart wanted to go and get my PhD. My heart wanted to go and do all that. but it didn't fit in the mold.
Mm.
And so there are times, especially right now, that I'm like, ooh, I'm going to go back and get my PhD. I just have no idea in what. Because I love the education of it. I'm a forever learner,
Mm.
and as much as I love to intuitively learn and really metabolize that stuff, I love data.
Right.
And so I love that research part of it. But at the end of the day, I'm now living the dream that I had back then to heal women and children,
So you
which ultimately heals their family.
technically need it.
For
It's
sure.
just for your sake to be like, okay, I've done what I said I was gonna do.
Right. Yeah. Does it look different? Absolutely. But, I mean, I've had clients who have said that, they're like, you're a coach and a therapist and an organizer all smashed into one, because I don't just make the things look cute on the shelf.
Yeah.
We get in there and we dig into the stuff and we heal and really solve the issue rather than
Yeah.
just band-aiding the problem.
Yeah, but I think this is something that a lot of women strive for, like to have some sort of certification, because otherwise we don't feel like we're good enough. And so even if now, of course, this is more like of a dream of yours that you didn't manage to make happen, although you're living a dream. But I know from working with my clients and personal experience and hearing stories on for the podcast and talking to women in general, that this uh, getting a certification for something or something else always pops up. And oftentimes it's like, oh, but I cannot, for example, charge my clients enough if I don't get this qualification, when the reality is you're already sharing a message, you're already doing the work, and you're already helping those people, and those people actually are happy to be helped by you because they see the result. But we still have this thing that because we've been told we need to have a certain amount of certification and do certain things, we still have at the back of our mind, which is I think it's really interesting.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think so many women do it because we feel like it's going to give us a leg up, right? It's going to really help us advance because, well, I'm certified in this, or I've got my master's, or I've got my whatever. And I think for some women, it's validation that I don't know this until somebody else tests me and says I know this.
That's right.
And they're just not trusting themselves.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's a certification for being a professional organizer here in the US. And I've very purposely for 16 years not done it because it doesn't fit who I am. And curiously, the organization, the professional association, if you will, for professional organizers here requires that. You can't be part of that organization unless you've got that certification. And, or at least that's how it was several years ago. I haven't looked in a long time. And that's unfortunate because they're missing out on a lot of people who are out there doing really good work, but that pigeonhole doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And it makes me think, like, how many women think, I want to be a professional organizer, I want to be an accountant, I want to be a whatever, but then they go down that path of certification and it doesn't feel right. And so they give up on the whole dream.
Yeah.
And that just hurts my heart because the dream is there, the skills are there, the gifts are there. The certification is just a piece of dang paper.
Yeah, and I super agree with you also, because you are proof of the fact that once you started to follow what you were meant to do, you started to be referred by people, and there is no advertisement, there is no going crazy on social media and trying to, it's just doing the work, helping the people, and the people will help you to find other clients. And this to me is the best certification you could possibly have, because it says, you're good at what you're doing. Like, I'm coming back to you because you gave me what I wanted, what I needed. And I think this is like the most important thing than a piece of paper that says you can, when you don't have your heart into it, but it's just something for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And, I mean, in 16, 17 years ago, when I started my business, social media didn't exist. There was, Facebook may have been in colleges or something. I don't know. But yeah, it didn't exist. Certainly not like it does now. I think LinkedIn was around, but that was about it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was truly a business built on word of mouth and networking.
That's amazing. So I want to go forward and talk about. So you said you weren't happy in working in HR. How was this transition for you to say, okay, I leave the corporate. I want to stay a little bit with my kids. How was the transition for you? How did you find strength in being like, okay, I'm going to start my business? Because it wasn't so common years ago to have a woman say, I'm going to leave my corporate job that gives me that much amount of money, and I'm going to start my business. It's either you stay home, as you said, or maybe a woman will work part-time or find odd jobs, but not necessarily start a business. So how was that for you?
I think I just didn't think about it. And my parents, I mean, my mom was a lifelong teacher, retired from her school district. My dad was an engineer for the same company for almost 40 years. And, there are entrepreneurs further back in my history, but not in my everyday. In my, I guess, late 20s, early 30s, I actually left and went on my own for about 9 or 10 months. And I was working a lot in the, in the mid to late 90s, there were a lot of high tech startups. And in Houston, where I am, there were a ton of them here, surprisingly. And so I was working with a lot of them, which is incredibly stressful. I mean, you're working 80, 90 hours a week, and it's just, I mean, you have no life. It's crazy, but it's fun and it's exciting and the pace is crazy. And I just got fried, and I went on my own, really as a way of saying, okay, I need to take a sabbatical, but I can't afford to take a sabbatical. So I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to still do some work for startups, but I'm not going to go sit there. I'm not going to be somebody's minion, right? Nobody's going to be my boss. I'm going to own my own business, and I'm going to recover. And for me, it was truly just that. It was that, I mean, like I was diagnosed with IBS. I went on anti-anxiety meds. Like it was just, I was a hot mess. And literally my doctor and my therapist were like, you need to take some time off. But I'm single. How do you take time off when you're single and you need to still make income, not independently wealthy? So I started my own business then, really because it felt like it was my only choice. And so I'd already ripped that Band-Aid once before, even though I didn't do it for but maybe 9 or 10 months. And it was the hardest 9 or 10 months, and of course there wasn't the Google and the YouTube and all of that to learn from. And so I think when I went out on my own again, I think I'd been around startups for so long at that point, and I'd already ripped the Band-Aid of doing it once when I didn't feel like I had a choice but to do it. And so it just didn't feel as scary. And, I was newly married. He had insurance. He had a stable income. We had just moved into a new house. And so it was just, the economy was taking a downturn. I was a consultant employed in a corporate consulting group, but I wasn't, I could see that there wasn't going to be as much work coming forward. And so it was very much well, if I'm going to do this, I might as well do this now. Because rather than getting laid off, rather than letting somebody else decide my timing, why don't I decide my timing and get out and do this and just work insane hours to build it, knowing that I can, I don't have a kid yet. And so that way it's, the idea was that I would just work crazy hours to build it so that it would be sort of flowing better. And seriously, 6 weeks into it, my husband got laid off.
Wow. And
and that's how I actually got the client I advertised with, because I talked to them. They did these little magazines. It was nothing but advertisements for all things kid related. And so I thought like, well, that seems like a really good place to advertise. So I had looked into them, and he called and followed up with me the morning that my husband was laid off. And he's like, so are you ready to get started? And I was like, well, no, I can't. And so we ended up doing a trade for a little bit too. And so that, you know, I provided some HR services to them that they needed as a small business, and they provided advertising for me. And so that along with my networking really kind of got things going pretty quickly. And I think I just really honestly, Mara, never thought about it. Because I mean, if you think about being your own business owner,
Oh yeah, you stop straight away.
Yeah, it's way too dang scary. But I think I mean, as a mom now, like, I think it's sort of like being a mom. Like, if I had known how hard it was to be a mom of a toddler, of a teenager, because my girls are 15 and 23 now. If I had known how hard it was to parent a teenage girl, I'm not sure I would have ever signed up for it. I think being an entrepreneur is kind of the same thing. If I had known how hard it was, I'm not sure I would have signed up for it. But the benefits far outweigh the hard. Yeah. Because the hard is generally seasonal, right? And I mean, like right now is a really hard season, I think, for a lot of us. But it's totally worth it every day.
I agree. I completely agree. And I agree with the fact that not knowing what's coming and not knowing, but just following that part of yourself that tells you to go ahead, it's the best thing. Because if you start thinking and overthinking all the pros and cons of why you should do or not do something, then that's when you get stuck, and that's where you do nothing, because fear starts to come up, and then you start to go in over thinking mode, and that's exactly where you shouldn't be. So I completely agree with you. And I think that's the best thing that you can do.
For sure. And like I said, I mean, I've always trusted my gut. And so, you know, if it didn't feel like the right job, if it didn't, you know, in an interview kind of situation, like if it didn't feel like the right job, even if it was good money or, you know, looked good on paper, it was like, no, that's not the right thing. You know, and so I think I just trusted my gut that it was just the right thing and went with it. And, you know, and my husband supported me. My family thought I was crazy. And so, but at the time, like my mom and I didn't get along great. So the fact that she thought it was crazy was just fuel. And so, yeah, I mean, I really don't think I ever thought about it.
No, I love this. I absolutely love this. I feel very much relating to this. I mean, I did think for a long time to become a coach, but then the moment I became an action entrepreneur, it was like so quick that I just went for it. And as you said, I like that you said there wasn't any other option. Like there wasn't the possibility to go look for another job and be under someone else telling you what to do. Because I felt the same. I was like, I need to get out of anybody telling me what to do. It's not about this particular company or those particular people. It's about the structure of having someone telling me what to do, how to do it, and not being rewarded for what I do. I need to get out of here. I need to do and be happy with what you do. So totally relate to that.
For sure. Well, and I think I've, you know, like we were talking about the other day that, you know, really in 2018, I sort of entered kind of a more intentional journey about kind of exploring my energetic being and my intuition and what the heck all that meant, you know, like really translating it and, you know, doing the learning and the education around that. And looking back, I was like, I'm not, because I would consider myself an ambivert, right? So like quarantine, I'm just totally fine being at home for days on end and not seeing anybody else. Love it. But, you know, put me in networking and I absolutely love it. But being surrounded, like in a corporate environment, sitting in an office environment, by all of those people. And I remember like the space where I felt the most suffocated. It was a startup. And they put we grew way too fast for the space we had. And they put 8 women in this conference room because we were all HR in some variety. And so we had to be in a space where we could have confidential conversations right? And not have the employee population hear us. So they literally put 8 of us in a conference room, and it was a glass conference room. So it was like a fishbowl. And all of our energies were in there together. And everybody could see us. And it was so uncomfortable. And I knew at the time it was super uncomfortable, but I couldn't like name it. But now looking back, holy crap.
Oh
It was
yeah.
a terrible idea.
I
Terrible.
think the space, it's together, of course, the people are the ones that will make you feel in a way or another, but I feel that the space is always something that affects you somehow. I'm the same, and every time I was like, is the carpet this color? And I do color therapy, so for me it's even more, I'm more aware of those, what the colors can do to you. And it just, the spaces, it's like those white lamps above your head, and there, it just does it, and it just drains your energy. Then maybe you do a job that is stressful, you deal with difficult people, and you have colleagues that not necessarily you get along with.
Right.
It just makes it very complicated, and no wonder you get to a point where you just stress out and you burn out. I think it's a consequence of not having your energy level balanced, because you can't. It's impossible. I think in a workspace like that, where there is no intention to look after the employee in that kind of way, and
Right.
it's normal to have people that are stressed out, they're angry, because all of your issues are just going to come up in a way or in another.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, and I see it every day with my clients, whether they're at work or at home, how much their space impacts them, and how they feel, how their family reacts, you know, and it's just, I really wish companies would look at that more.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, you know, so many people now are having to work from home, and companies are rethinking, well, if this is working where they're working from home, then do we need to have so much office space? Do we need to have so many people in the office? And I think there's a lot of people who are working from home that think it sounds good because they can work in pajama bottoms and they can see their kids more and not have to sit in traffic. But is that space really conducive for doing business? Is that space really a good fit for you? And some people aren't suited to work from home.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be interesting, because I think we're going to see that uptick of people working from home because they think that feels better, right? Because right now we have to, but then it'll feel better. And then I think we're going to crest that place where it's like, nope, I need to go back to an office.
Yeah, I think the best is to have the choice to work from the office and work from home. And I've seen a few conversations on LinkedIn, and it's amazing to see how, especially more startup where you have younger CEOs or younger founder, where they're like, okay, I realize that actually I trust my employee, and so I'm going to reduce and allow them to work from wherever. And then you see the old kind of mentality, kind of blaming the employees that want to stay home, because that's not how you work. And I think there's going to be this clash of people that want to force you to do certain things, and others that are going to be like, no. And then, as you said, as more we go, because I think when you decide to work from home like we do, you know it.
Well, right. I mean, I think that's the other piece of it, is I think it's too easy for people to not turn off work when you work from home, especially because there's so many people who are in it now, not on purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And so they'll think, okay, well, I'll take 2 hours off in the middle of the afternoon and I'll have lunch with my kids and we'll play in the pool and then I'll get back to it. But there is something to be said, like you said, for leaving the office, even if that office is in your home. And I love that you said that the bedroom didn't feel right. That is a key thing for me. Like, no work in the bedroom. That has to be a sanctuary space.
I mean, like, I just felt like I just woke up. I can't just go back again. Like, I do realize even just the fact of stopping to work at some point, because otherwise I realized I was like, oh, let me finish this. Oh, I didn't do that earlier. Right. Or, oh, I just had an idea for a post. I was like, if I leave my computer upstairs in the office, then I'm downstairs, and that's when I am chatting. I don't know, going for a walk, staying in the garden, cooking, whatever, but it has nothing to do with work. Because otherwise, you go back to where you were. It doesn't matter. You still always an override because you feel like you said maybe guilty because you took 1 hour more off to stay with your kid or go for a walk because you know you
Right.
can, but then you actually work more after.
Mhm.
All right, so now I want to explore a little bit more this. I love that people told you what to do, and you're not the first one. It happened to me, and I hear so many, oh, my friends tell me to do this, and that's when I started to explore the thing. So were you thinking of becoming something like doing some kind of work around organizing, or was this something that only people told you, why don't you?
Well, I think for me, it didn't seem like it was a real business,
Mhm.
right? Like it didn't seem like I didn't understand how regular people would pay for that. And how was I going to, the uber wealthy that had organizers, they had their own person. And that wasn't appealing to me because then somebody else was still my boss.
Yeah.
Like that's what I was not signing up for. So I really just didn't understand it. And it, like I said, it was just really coming into a bit more mainstream for the middle class. And so I think because it seemed like so much fun to me, the idea of, okay, I could do this for a living seemed so weird, that like somebody's going to pay me to do this. And I think the other side of it too was it felt like I was throwing away my education.
Mhm.
I had gotten my bachelor's, I had gotten my master's, I had gotten my certification, I had done all this education, all this work, and I was just going to throw it away to go help somebody clean their garage. Right? Like that.
Yeah, I had a moment
It's
because
one of
it
those,
does
like,
sound
it
really
didn't,
bad. Yeah.
right. It really does sound really bad.
It really
And
does.
so I was like, well, I could have done that for free and not done all this school and not spent all this time. And the reality is, could I do it the way I do it now without the background that I've had? No, not at all. The background that I've had has created so much and informed so much of how I do what I do. And so, and created part of who I am, of course. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it was the encouragement of friends that got me into it, because I just really didn't think that, like, I knew I could do it.
Mm.
I just, the idea that it could be a business seemed crazy to me. So, but it's a big business now.
I love it. I love it. So tell us about it. Like, I love what you do. But tell us more. What does it mean to be a professional organized coach? What exactly? If I came to you and said to you, Jennifer, I need to put furniture in my office. What do I do? Or how does that work?
Well, in the land before quarantine, most of my business was in home. I did some virtual where I'd gotten a referral and that person wasn't in Houston. And so we would do it via Zoom like this, but it was always very weird for people. Like they just, because I mean, like outside of the entrepreneurial land, most people didn't know this video chat thing very well.
Right, right. That's true.
And so the idea that we could like do this that way, that seemed to not compute. Because I mean, it was probably 6 or 7 years ago that I had the thought of like, I really want to do more virtual. I want to do more webinars. I want to do more education. I want to be able to serve more women.
Mm.
And it wasn't the right time for a lot of reasons. And so kind of shelved it, even went and worked for somebody else for a little while because I thought this entrepreneurial land is hard, right? And then realized, no, this entrepreneurial land is hard, but I am never working for somebody again. And that's about when I decided, no, I'm leaving HR. I'm doing 100% organizing and coaching, and just went for it. And so now what it looks like, and it was still mostly in home at that point, but now thanks to our friend COVID-19, the plans I had for this year of going more virtual, creating a membership, doing digital courses, all got accelerated. So I've got virtual courses. In fact, by the end of this month, there will be another 4 or 5 in my library. And they're all really easy, consumable things. And, you know, some of them are kind of foundation pieces, like the foundation for decision making, because I really walk through that because I think it makes life easier. Once you know how to make the decisions, then that's your filter. And then it's easy to know what to keep and not to keep and how to keep it. I've got a solutions for clutter course. So again, you know, here's some sort of foundational stuff. But then we dive into, you know, I've got courses on each of, you know, the bedroom and the bathroom and like each of the spaces and kind of how you walk through those. And then time management is another one that I've taught for a long, long time, both in my HR land and my organizing land. And how I approach it is a little bit different. So I do, I've got a digital course that's coming out for that, but then I'm also going to be doing some live workshops where for 90 minutes, we, you know, I drop in some of the education piece, but we actually work through it almost like a group coaching kind of thing. And because I believe in time blocks, but I don't believe that they are glued down on your calendar. And that's really different from the traditional time block method. And so yeah, I've got a membership that just opened in June. I run it in seasons. So we're in the summer season right now. And I'm actually going to be doing a promotion starting next week to do early enrollment for the fall season. And because that'll open in September. That'll open September 1st. And that is just, it's a beautiful community of women who are willing to invest in themselves and really get in there and learn. And we just do one thing every month. So in June, we did the bedroom. Now we're doing the bathroom. And they get a course, they get a challenge, they get journal prompts, they get a collaboration conversation, they get almost everyday support from me. I come in live to the group at least once a week to answer questions. We've got guest speakers. And so it's a beautiful community. And it's one of those things that's been on my heart for lots of years. And so to see it come together in the way that I dreamed it, and if not better, is amazing.
Yeah, I can.
And then I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, whether it's in a 30-minute power session because you've got one little thing that's making you crazy, or, you know, if you're like, okay, I'm setting up my new office, where do I start? Or I'm in this office with a folding table, I hate it. What do I do now? Then, you know, let's jump on a 1-hour session and really dig into it. And that, what that would look like is we would talk through what you want out of the space first. You know, we're not going to start moving things around. We're not going to start putting things away or figuring out what to keep and not keep. We're going to talk about what you want from that space first, because that's that filter, right? And once you know what you want from the space, then figuring out what furniture goes in there, what decor goes in there, that part's easy. And the coaching can be there to help support you through that, because if you've gotten yourself in a habit of not making decisions and not trusting yourself, it can be really, really hard. It's not a switch that flips often. And so you've got to build that muscle of decision making and trusting yourself and getting that confidence. And I mean, I had a client that told me a couple months ago, I was working with her. She was going crazy. And we were actually working on time management stuff and for her business. And she just offhandedly said, you know, it makes me crazy when it's time to go make dinner that my house is a mess. She's got 4 boys that are, you know, young adults and older teenagers, plus her husband. So five men essentially in her house that don't normally live there, right? Because one of them is normally a full adult and living in his own place. 2 of them are normally in college, and one of them is in high school. And so all of them are in the house all the time and eating all the food, right? And she's like, so when I get ready to go make dinner, I love making dinner for my boys, but I go in there and the kitchen's a disaster. And food I was going to use for dinner is now partially gone. And I was like, well, then let's solve for that. Let's, set the boundary that they need, by, if you're going to start making dinner at 6, by 5:30, they need to make sure that the kitchen is completely cleaned up. And she's like, okay, that worked. They're okay with that. And they're starting to put things away like during the day in the dishwasher rather than leaving it till the last minute. But now they need to empty the dishwasher and they don't know where anything goes. Right. And I was like, then put some dang Post-it notes on the outside of the cabinets. You want to label the inside of the cabinets. I'm a big believer in labeling because it empowers people. But put some temporary ones on the outside of the cabinets. It empowers them to do the right thing because they're not doing it, not because they don't want to, but they're not doing it out of fear that they're going to do it wrong and that's going to upset you. And she's like, really? And I was like, go ask them. And sure enough, they weren't doing it because they were afraid they were going to put something in the wrong place and it was going to really make mom angry.
Right.
And it was solved by Post-it notes. Right. And after a couple of weeks, they knew where things went because they're running that dishwasher once or twice a day. So they're getting lots of practice. And now she can walk in there at 6 and make dinner. And she's doing the same thing with like her food prep stuff. Like she's got a box that's labeled like dinner food. And everything goes in there. So they know, like, stay away from that because that's protected food. And she's like, Jennifer, it made me feel so brave and confident to be able to move into that space, to be able to, and the idea that like this was around making dinner and getting the dishwasher emptied and the sink emptied, right? Things that are really so simple.
Yeah.
But that she felt brave and confident, right? And so
isn't it funny how women react to certain situations? And I like that you talked about boundaries because we feel we need to put boundaries on work stuff, but not necessarily on personal relationships.
Right.
And not necessarily on kids or husbands, wives, and people that are with us most of the time.
Right.
When the reality is, hey, we should have boundaries for everything. And if someone doesn't understand what they need to do, we just need to tell them and make sure that there is a communication of some sort.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, and it's funny because her initial feeling when we were talking about it was, I've failed as a parent. How do my kids not know this already? How is this not just ingrained in them? And I was like, but this is something that you learn. And you were a mom, like many of us that are moms, doing your best and working and coming from your own family of origin stuff. And you were doing for them.
Yeah.
And you didn't realize the consequence of you going in and cleaning up the kitchen and emptying the dishwasher and filling the dishwasher. You saw that as a gift that you were doing for them. They didn't have to mess with that. But you didn't see the consequence of it until now.
Yeah.
You've been given the gift that they've come back into your home and they've reminded you that, yes, that was a gift because that saved me time when I was a crazy teenager. But I need the gift now of understanding how to create those boundaries and how to keep a clean kitchen and how to put things away in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
And that opportunity doesn't end. That opportunity can start today, tomorrow, whenever it needs to. And so for her, she feels like, not only has it freed her up and made her feel better, but they're enjoying dinner more. She's not resentful. And she feels like her boys know better how to live in a space with somebody else and how to respect that space. And they've started cooking. And so she gets nights off now. Yeah. And so it's continuing to kind of snowball.
And it's amazing how a tiny thing, because that's really a tiny thing, having to put post notes on the cupboard when.
Right.
Yes. Like, I think that as women, we're like, okay, well, just open everything and look where they are and just put them wherever. Right. But it doesn't, like, we have a different way of thinking. And I think this is also one thing we forget, the assumption that people should know because they.
Absolutely.
have a certain age or whatever, they lived in a place for as long, and but once you communicate and you create the boundaries and you're going to organize yourself in order for them to know what to do, then things come back to you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's incredible. You know, and just to put in little boundaries are,
Oh yeah.
it's easy, and you know, and you start there and then you push it a little bit more and you push it a little bit more until it feels right. You
Yeah.
know, or you pull it back if it doesn't feel right. You know, and again, so much of that is, I think so many women have good intuition and it's been crushed
Mm-hmm.
by years of should.
Yeah.
And to be able to get back in touch with that, I think is so important. So I think the work that you're doing is beautiful in bringing that back to the consciousness of women.
Thank you. Well, you know, to me, it's like once you are connected to yourself, there is no other way. And also, I feel also my personal experience being Italian, coming from an Italian family, a Catholic country, I've seen how my grandparents were, how my parents were, and to me it was like, I don't want to be in anything of this. Like, to me, life should be easier. You don't need to work hard necessarily. I can make money. But it's been a challenge to navigate my family because of the constraint, and I do understand where they come from because my dad was born just after the Second World War and my mom years after, and I know the stories that my grandparents went through, so I do know why their mindset is like that. But to me it was always like, no, I don't want to do what you say. I want to do something, and it was always a challenge for me to even just change job to get a better job, because
Right.
my parents wouldn't understand. Like my dad, like you said your earlier, my dad worked in the same company for years, like 20 years, and then the company failed, so he got made redundant and he had to find another job. But there wasn't this thing of like, you know, you become an entrepreneur and what like, no, you know, all those conceptions that they had, they were trying obviously to put them down on me, and I was like, no. And I know what it feels like to have someone trying to tell you who you should be, what you should do, and having that thing inside of you being like, no. But it's difficult to have to face those people whenever it's family or friends or people that you love, because they don't understand it, and there is a lot of miscommunication and hurt, and you need to really stand your ground. But what I learned personally is that every time I felt that I followed the good feeling instead of the logic or what I was told that I was supposed to be, I was just happier. So to me, the feeling happy meant way more than, you know, get that job because it makes you more money. I'm 38. I'm single. I don't have kids, and I don't want to have kids. But to make my mom understand that I don't want to have kids, it's been a complicated conversation,
I'm sure.
because she's like, "What do you mean? Do you like girls?" I'm like, "No, that's not the point. That's not the point.
That's
I just,
her.
you know." But you know, it's complicated for them to understand why a woman is single, that because, you know, and I do understand. So for me this is important because it's kind of want to say, women, whatever it is that you want to be or do, you can. There is a lot of work to do,
Mm-hmm.
for sure, because we have to remove a lot of layers and emotions attached to the layers, but once you get to a point of knowing who you are, life it's so much easier. So much easier.
No, I agree. Well, and it's, you know, as a parent, I can see how hard it is, you know, because I want to create this really safe, beautiful box for my girls, right? And I want to teach them how to work hard, and I want them to go to school and get the skills that they need to get a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a safety net.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you do that? Because I think that is important, right? But how do you do that and encourage them to think outside of that box, and that they truly can be whatever they want, and that being happy is important, but not necessarily every day,
Mm.
right? Because as an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter what your job is, right? Whether
Oh
you
yeah,
work for yourself, you work for somebody else, there are going to be hard days. There are going to be tough clients. They're,
sure.
and you can't just always follow the smiles and rainbows and unicorns, right? But it doesn't mean that you have to live life miserable. And so figuring out as a parent how to sort of create that for my girls is really hard. So I have a different appreciation now for, like where my parents came from. Cause I mean, my parents were born in 45 and 47, so very similar. And my grandparents and, kind of the construct that they came from. And my grandparents and my mom are Mexican. So there is a lot of intertwined cultural stuff there.
Mm.
And so it's really interesting to see how do I build this safety box for them in which to learn and get that foundational stuff that they need in life, and then smash the box and tell
Mm.
them to go do whatever the hell they want. And so and as my oldest is 23 and really kind of exploring her own, and my youngest is 15, and my youngest is just a little ball of literal energy. She is just an amazing energetic healer being. And so to see her try to live in the construct of a traditional land is really hard.
Yeah.
And so it's, but I do appreciate, you know, how hard it is as a parent, especially coming from, the depression, from the world wars, to
Oh yeah.
create, I mean, you create the box for your kids that
Yeah.
and you try to improve the box a little,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, I mean, trying to explain, I mean, I was mid-30s before I had my daughter. And, and that was unheard of in my family.
Yeah. I can
And
imagine.
so,
Yeah. Well,
so yeah,
now I think now we are breaking so many boundaries in
sure.
so many levels. But I feel that on a personal level, so many women have to break so many boundaries that sometimes we put on ourselves. Like we put ourselves in a box because yes, maybe we heard it and from someone else, but then that doesn't necessarily apply to us.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, because I hear this conversation and I went through this, and that's when I realized actually I don't want to have kids. When you have a group of girlfriends that you always do things together, and then all of a sudden one finds a boyfriend, and and they start to get married and they start to have kids, and maybe you have a boyfriend that you don't have a boyfriend, but you're never in that stable situation.
Right.
I never really cared to be, but I never really even asked myself what I wanted. And so then come the questions. So what are you doing? When are you? Oh, but you have a certain age. And I was like, and yeah, to me, that wasn't a question. But when people start to ask you questions, then I was like,
Mhm.
am I supposed to be having someone right now? Am I supposed to be having kids? Shall I think about? And that's when I started to feel into that. And I was like, okay, have I ever dreamt of having a family? Not really. I always dreamt of going around the world, explore the world, and do things. I never really dreamt about, the white dress like a lot of my friends used to talk
Mhm.
about when we were teenagers. I never been the one. I was like, oh, I want to go to concerts. Or so I started to really be honest with myself to a point that I was like, I think I don't want. And then from I think it became like, no, I'm pretty sure. And people are like, yeah, but you say this now. I promise you, when you find the right man, I'm like, no, I promise you, that's gonna so always be the same thing. But you see how
Mhm.
people try to tell you that it's wrong, and you really need to know what you want to stand your ground. Because if you're unsure, or if you're too used to be told what to do,
Mhm.
that's when you start to. And so for me, that's why it's important. It's like yes, maybe you are whatever, a people pleaser or something. It's okay. It's just a matter of removing the layers of society, of family, what people think of you, and really understand who you are. And once you know that, then you also know what you want, because you're no longer scared to go against whatever it is. You're gonna have conversations that are not pleasant with a lot of people.
For sure.
But that's life, you know. And I think that once you know that, then your purpose comes naturally, because it's when you start to allow yourself to follow what is that your heart is telling you to do. And I think we all have that, but obviously, as you said, you know, safe and secure job and this, and then you had an idea in mind because you wanted to have kids, but now even that idea can be broken and you can create what you want. So I think this era is so powerful because we have way more freedom to do things, but what we need to remove is the mindset and the fears.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and one of my daily struggles, I mean, and it's the thing I'm working on the hardest right now. Not, you know, and I'm working really hard on my business and creating new offerings and all of that. But the thing I'm working hardest on right now is that mindset piece of I can be an amazing business owner and an amazing mom. They're
Oh
not
yeah.
mutually exclusive. They don't both have to suffer. And they really both can happen simultaneously and in the same space. And so, because it's so hard between, like you said, between society, between family, between friends, it's, you know, and you see women out there who are just killing it in their business. They're doing amazing work, and they're moms, and they get grief for it all the time. And whether it's silently or outwardly. And so it's reinforced. And so it really is that mindset. It really is trusting your intuition. It really is knowing and owning who you are and what you want, that really breaks that open. And then everything just happens as it should.
Yeah, I think, you know, then you're able to set boundaries and stand your ground. And once you're able to do that, then, you know, there is no stopping you. It's going to take time, but it's possible, and we should get to that point.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love this conversation. There is another question I wanted to ask you before
Yes.
we wrap up. So you mentioned working with energies as well. How does that apply into organizing your space or your life?
So, I mean, you're obviously very in touch with that energetic work. And so how that applies in your space, how that applies in your time, I know, just like, of course it does, right? But many of my clients, like, I kind of have to sneak it in around the back door, if you will, because they're not necessarily in that more holistic mindset or that woo kind of thing, right? They just know that their pantry is a hot mess. They can't find anything in the closet and they need help. And so we start working from there, and slowly but surely, you know, I mean, because the first layer is that, you know, we start working on values. We start figuring out what priorities are, right? Which is really just, you know, right on the, you know, because to me, there's like that energy, that mindset, and then, you know, there's your values and all that kind of stuff. So it's really just starting to crack that edge of it, that, you know, let's figure out what your values are about your closet, not your overall big values in life.
I love that. The values about your closet. I never heard about this. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, think about what you value in that space. Do you want it to be beautiful? Do you want it to be bright? Do you want it to be soft? And do you want it to look like a beautiful boutique? Do you want it to look like a bargain store? Do you not care? Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot about, you know, how do you want to move through the morning as you're getting ready for work and your day? How do you, you know, and think about not just getting ready for work, but getting ready for, you know, if your spiritual practices, getting ready for a night out, getting ready for a wedding that you're going to, getting ready for, you know, big events. How do you want to think about that space? How do you want to feel in that space? How do you want to move through that space? And then how do you want it to greet you at the end of the day when you're ready to take the day off? Right. And so that, I mean, it really does break people's heads that, you know, it's just my closet. Like, can't you just make it look better and feel better? Well, I can, but it's not my closet. Like, I don't use a template. So if you go into every closet I've done, there's a few things that I do in every single closet. I ask people to group things by color. I ask people to group things by sleeve length and or category of, like, put all your shirts together, put all your pants together, right? But there's 2 or 3 different ways to do each of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to feel good for them. And what works for me is not necessarily what works for you. Because, for instance, and I'm just going to take a guess here as an example. So I have mine by sleeve, my shirts by sleeve length. And within each of those sleeve lengths, I have them in color order. But I would imagine that in your closet, as a person who works with color, they're by color first, and then they may be sorted beyond that. And so
There is a lot of color in my wardrobe.
but I would imagine that for you to see the spectrum uninterrupted would feel better than to see the categories and then the spectrum inside that category.
Yeah.
Right.
Categories for me, it's related to the drawers. So then I have the t-shirts, and because it's easier.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. The wardrobe,
Sure.
it's something that is, yeah, absolutely.
And so, you know, and it depends on the space, because some people have a teeny tiny place to hang their things. Some people have rooms, right?
Yeah.
And so it depends, you know, that those values, those priorities create that. And so we start working on that, and then they start to get that, oh, this feels different. And then that's when it starts to kind of creep in. And because I'm super intuitive when it comes to working with people and how they work and where they get stuck, I can easily sort of direct them in a way that they don't even know is happening, but that will help them really harness the best energy for themselves. And so most of my clients have no idea that at the end of the day, what I do is energy work.
Oh, I love this. It's amazing.
They think they've got a beautiful closet that feels better and they can find their shirts. Right. And so my energy work at this point in my career is very sneaky. And so it feels so weird, right? But it's, you know, some of it is the idea of marrying energy and emotion with your space or with your time is just, it's not out there enough.
Yeah.
And so in the community that already does that work, absolutely it makes sense. But I would bet that if you look in most of their closets, they're a hot mess.
Yeah.
And so, because they disregard those spaces, and we really shouldn't. And so I just, yeah, I mean, you know, and I'm a big believer in the sanctuary space, which is, to me, it's the combination of your bedroom, your bathroom, and your closet, even if they're not attached, because they're not always en suite, right?
Yeah.
But your bedroom in particular has to be your sanctuary.
Agree. I completely agree.
And, you know, get other people's pictures out of there, make it feel how you want. And if you've got a partner, that's where it gets challenging, right? You each have to do your value work, and then you come together and you create a shared set of values for that space. Because if you don't have shared values in that space, then there's my side and their side.
I love this.
And that doesn't sound like a good relationship to me.
Yeah, I think we don't think about all of those things because it feels like, you know, it's just a room. It's just things. But the reality is that everything has energy. And so if the energy doesn't match our energy and our values and vibrations and what we want and how we want to feel, there's always going to be something that makes us feel stuck or angry or frustrated more than we should. Maybe we are already because something happened to us and we're angry with someone. But then if you come into a room and it doesn't feel like comfortable or harmonious or whatever it is that we want it to feel like, then the energy clashes our energy. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
completely
mean,
agree with you.
and the bedroom, especially if you are in partnership with someone, if that energy is not good in there, your partnership's not going to be good. And I mean, there was a woman that's in my membership group, and she was doing the value exercise because last month we were working in the bedroom area, and she went through and did it. Her husband went through and did his values. They created a shared values, and all of a sudden it just lit them up. They completely redid their bedroom. They had been traveling a lot with military stuff, and he's out of the military now, and so they're, but she realized that they had never purposely put their bedroom together.
Mm.
And they have a cork board now, and I love this idea. They've got a cork board that has each of their individual values on it, their shared values on it, and it's got a space where if they want to leave each other notes that day, they can.
Aww,
I know, isn't that
nice.
great?
Yeah.
But then other things like on her dresser, she created a space where she's got a lot of her jewelry out where she can easily grab it. She can observe it as a piece of art, but it also reminds her to put that beauty on, because it was just getting really easy to just throw on clothes, especially in quarantine, right? And just throw on clothes and move about the day. And so slowly but surely she's layering in more accessories, and she's layering in more color on her clothes, and not always wearing gray, and not always throwing the hair up, and her energy has shifted, and their relationship has shifted, and they're getting unstuck from where they were, and her business is opening up, and it's just, so it, again, that energy work sort of sneaks in there.
Yeah.
And they describe it by, like, it feels different. I don't know how, but it feels different. Even if their closet, like if their closet was neat and tidy before, but it was really full, it wasn't organized by color, it wasn't whatever, right? And I don't know why it feels different. It just feels different.
Yeah.
I enjoy getting ready for my day now, and that kind of thing, and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't think about how important it is to have a space at home that creates that freedom for us to be and feel how we want to feel. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, you think about it in a closet, like if you've got tops in there that have holes in them, or that don't fit right, or they don't make you feel good when you wear them, oh my gosh, right? As an energy person, that's terrible. And even if you bypass it every time, it's still in there. And so get all that bad energy out. And I'm a big fan of making the choice of what to keep. It's not about what you're getting rid of, it's about what you're keeping. And so again, that's that putting that positive energy into it.
Yeah.
And not, oh, she made me get rid of all this stuff.
Yeah.
Or, oh my gosh, I just, then they're, they can feel good about, oh my gosh, look at those bags of things that are leaving my house.
Yeah.
And they can feel good about that. And that's unsticking that energy, even though if they don't know how to put the words to it.
Yeah. I completely agree. And since I learned about energies, I'm like, every time I'm throwing things away, I'm cleaning up, I'm going crazy, especially when I feel stuck, or when I feel like things are not, my energy is not where it should be. But yeah, you learn. I think you learn with time, and with experiencing the difference. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now tell us where we can find you if you want to work with you.
Awesome. So my website is cultivating-you, and on Instagram, I'm jennifer.cultivating.you. There's a lot of Jennifers in the world, so none of my things are the same, unfortunately. And yeah, I mean, I would love to have your folks come into my community. I've got a free Facebook group where I do trainings every week.
What's the name of the group?
It's right now it's Cultivating Community. And I'm actually getting ready to update the name. I don't have the new name quite yet, so that's but you'll have the link in it, and it's on my Instagram, and it'll be on everything. So
okay.
You'll be able to find me either way. But yeah, I'm just, and Cultivating You is the name of my company. So I've got a Facebook page, so that'll lead you there too. And it's just, it's a beautiful group to get daily and weekly support. And, if you want to dive in deeper, you can join the Clear Your Chaos membership and do one-on-one coaching. And I'm here to support you.
Amazing. Oh, I love talking to you about all those topics because they're my favorite topics. Just before we wrap up, one advice you would like to give to women?
Oh, to break that down to one thing, I would say make the time for yourself. And even if it's 10 minutes a day, to go for a walk, get space by yourself, listen to your favorite podcast, whatever it is. And if that means that, you feel like you want to do some organizing in that time, if that means you want to just be quiet in that time, take that time for yourself, because that's when you can awaken your heart and you can awaken your soul, and the true you can start coming out. And if you let it come out a little bit at a time, if that's all you're willing to give it, then that's okay. If you're willing to really crack it open and, go take a 3-day retreat by yourself, beautiful. But give yourself that gift of time by yourself.
Perfect. I love it. I agree. I always take a lot of time because I learned that it's very important. And that's how your intuition also comes up and you start to get more into yourself. So yeah.
For sure, because otherwise there's too much noise. There's too much static.
Yeah. Jennifer, thank you so much. This has been such a beautiful conversation, and thank you for sharing your story and tell us what you do. I love what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lovely conversation. I feel like we could talk for days.
Yeah, I know. We will in another situation.
Yeah, for sure.
What an interesting conversation with Jennifer. I love talking about that topic. I could have gone on forever. But anyway, so if you want to get in touch with her, just go to the show notes. Everything is there. If you instead want to get in touch with me, just go to theintuitionqueen.com. You can learn more about me. You can find all of my offers. You can find the intuitive session, color therapy session, if you want a reading with cards. And if you want to sign up to my 4-month program, any questions, let me know. Otherwise, please sign up to the newsletter and I will give you all the updates that I'm coming up with. And also I will let you know when the episode of the podcast are coming up. Otherwise, you can follow me on Instagram at The Intuition Queen. And thank you so much for watching and listening. I will see you next week.
Your future's at the door.